Well, hello, my YouTube friends. We are up to seating primers on the 6.5 Grendel, and I'll wait a little bit for some of you guys to log in here. So we are up to part 7 of seating primers, and we don't have many steps left. But let me get the chat board up here so make sure that we are live. See who's logging in. And Takey 5000, yo, how's it going? Takey 5000, that is one heck of a name. All right, you got to tell me how did you get the name Takey 5000? I gotta know this. Curious people are inquiring. All right, so we are, like I said, up to seating primers, and if you have not seen this live series yet, let's see here. We had a quick recap. Part 1, decapping, got it in the wash. Part 2, got it out of the wash, put it in the cycle and case dryer for drying. Part 3, we nailed with the Neil Ease. Part 4, we full length resize, went over lubing. Part 5, we got it out of the wash and went over dye and press maintenance. And part 6 here, which we just did this morning, or early afternoon I should say, was trimming the brass, chamfering, and deburring. So that's where we are at right now. Part 7 of seating primers. Jeff Allen's rolling in. He's saying, hey Todd. Hey Jeff, how you doing, my friend? Cam413 is back in the house. And we are up to seating primers. This, I was contemplating on doing seating primers and dropping powder and seating bolts, but I think that'd just be too much for one live session, especially for those that are absolutely new to the game. So I want to keep this somewhat simple, stupid, and we're just going to concentrate on seating primers right now. And we're just going to wait a little bit longer, a couple more minutes, let some more people log in. And Jeff Allen, good man. Cabin fever setting in. Yes, that's definitely happening at our house. The kids in the other half is, I think they're ready to be done with this whole thing. And it's amazing when you go through situations like this where sometimes you'd actually see the kids put down the cell phones and go outside and enjoy the sun for a change. It's actually kind of a nice change of pace. But I actually got outside right after this morning's live event and raked some leaves. So that was the extent of my day. It was no shooting guns. So yeah, we are up to seating primers, and I'm using the Hornady AP lock and load press. So if you got a Hornady AP press, you're in luck. And I'm just gonna quick show you in regards to primers. And I usually use CCI primers almost exclusively. I've had really good luck with them. And usually when I buy primers, I usually date them. So man, these are pretty darn old, back from 9/25/16. And usually what I'll do is I'll date these so I can kind of, use up the old ones first before I move on to the newer ones. And some of these too, you'll notice that I actually tape the receipt on them. I actually tape the receipt because once in a while I'll actually return some of these products, and Shields is actually cool enough to return them. And I've done that before, especially with powder. You can notice some of this powder, I actually had the receipt taped on them, and I have no joke returned powder back to Shields years later, and they take it back. They're cool about it. And if they're cool enough to take it back, what the hell? I'll take them up on that. Especially, I get a particular firearm, and that particular powder shoots great for that firearm, but then I sell the firearm. And I'm like, man, I really don't need this powder anymore. And I have a couple extra jugs that I haven't even touched. The seal's not broken, and I've literally taken back to Shields. And that place is awesome. I love Shields. Their customer service is top notch, and they match prices. They match even online gun prices. So yeah, they're hard to beat. But I pretty much, when it comes to powder, it's almost exclusively XBR, Varget, and I don't know if I can reach back here far enough. I don't know. I got some H4350 back there too, and I got a ton of 1 pound jugs of it. I don't know, I probably got 2 or 3 8-pound jugs of H4350. But that's pretty much my main 3 staple powders: is Varget, H4350, and XBR 8208. But yeah, in regards to primers, and if you're new to the game, they have small rifle primers. You know, you'll see this a lot in regards to small rifle primers. And primers are really, really cheap now. Time to stock up if you can get them. Small rifle primers, they're notorious for things like 223. Matter of fact, the 6.5 Grendel that we're about to prime. And also you got large rifle primers. It's a bigger cup, a little bit more oomph behind that primer when it ignites. And you'll see that a lot in stuff like 308, 243, 6.5 Creedmoor, stuff like that. So if you're new, that's something you're definitely going to want to know. So right now I am going to be seeding small rifle primers, the number 400s, because we are doing the 6.5 Grendel that takes a small rifle primer. And if you guys missed the previous live episode that was this morning, you can definitely go back and watch that, or the whole series if you missed the whole live event. So next part is probably gonna be the last part here, dropping powder and seeding bullets. So let me check out some of your comments, see if you guys have any questions here. It's like Harold Farmer's rolling in the house. He says, "What primer are you using?" Man, I must be reading people's minds today. So, like I said, I'm using CCI small rifle primers, and that is the number 400. So, if you are new to the game and you're about to purchase your equipment, you're definitely going to need one of these, a primer flip tray. And let me get you guys up close and personal here. And we got 50 pieces of brass that we need to prime. Now, the primer flip tray is exactly what does exactly what it says. Is it flips your primers over in one general direction, and you can notice that you got the cap if you're absolutely new to the game, and you got the tray itself, and it's got these little ridges. I'll put this against the microphone. So what this does, it orientates your primers all in one direction. And we are doing 50, and if you guys watch the reloading series for this particular firearm on my channel, you can see we've already used 50. We got 50 left. There's 100 and one pack here. So what you do is you just cup your primers just like this. Take the tray, flip it upside down, and you can see some of them are facing up, some of them are facing down. And you just kind of swirl this around. I'm sure some of you guys already know this, but some of you guys that are new, definitely gonna help you out with that. And then you flip this over, and it's that easy. So we got our pickup tube, because I have a Hornady progressive press. And if you are absolutely new to reloading and you have that Hornady lock and load press, you're in luck. And I just got done cleaning the primer shuttle area, and if you want this operation to go smooth, you really got to make sure that this primer seating area is as clean as can be, and I can't stress that enough. Hopefully this goes smooth on live TV. We don't have any issues, but I did clean this up. I took this all apart. I mean, I tore it right down to the shell plate here. I took the tube off, everything, and I cleaned this up with brake cleaner, and I finished it off with dry lube. You definitely don't want to leave that brake cleaner on. That's just to get the dirt and solvents out of there, and then finish it up with some dry lube and get that nice and clean. And make sure you clean inside that primer tube also. And some guys miss that step. They leave the inside of that primer tube really dirty, and you got to clean the inside of that also. So let's pick up these primers. We're gonna make this somewhat of a short video here, and I'm gonna pick these up, all 50 of them. I got the wrong size. So you must have the wrong size pickup tube. Let me grab the right one here. Here we go. Let's try to use the large pickup tube for small primers. That doesn't work. So I got to pick up 50 of these. So if you guys got any questions or any comments, let them rip. And if you are new to the game, let yourself be known, and I'll try my best to answer your questions. And good old Alaska 1 Andy is rolling into the house. And I might go shooting tomorrow. I'm not sure. It just depends all on the weather. But man, today was it ever nice out. Man, I think I just missed the primer there. Yep. I just missed the primer. All right. Done with that. Jeff Allen, primers I am low on. Need to make a mad dash for them out in the wild. Yeah, primers are actually really cheap right now. I think it's because powder is so impossible to get that no one can even use the primers. But yeah, so I have the Hornady lock and load, and actually let me back you up here. I gotta grab, trying to do this with a primer pickup tube in one hand. I need to grab one. I know some of you guys think my reloading room is clean, but I think it's messy. I need to clean this shit up right here. All right, there, God. All right, so we need to drop. Well, if you guys, or some of you guys are new, you can see that's where we're going to drop those primers down, the primer tube, and I'm going to use my primer pickup tube. See if I can get this in the picture just right. And if I did a good job cleaning this primer shuttle area, this should go smooth. And I have a piece of brass over here, that same piece of brass that I double check my calipers with, that I know for a fact are excuse me, 1.750. I actually use that as a weight to go on top of this rod. Let me make this out. And what you do is, I got this filled to the max, well, not to the max, I should say 50 primers, and I am now going to flip this upside down. If you are new, you can actually see one stick still sticking in the end there. So I'm actually going to forcibly push that one out. So I got something like this. You guys can make that out in the picture. And it's got a little cotter pin here. And when I pull that cotter pin, all those primers are going to flow right down this primer tube. And you're going to watch this white rod here drop along with it. And you just pull this out. And then I usually add a little weight, just a little chunk of brass, put it on the top. And that's it. And if I did my job correctly, we should see a primer coming out the primer shuttle. So let's see if that is working correctly. All right, let me try and get something figured out here with my tripod, and so I can still do this. So I think that should work. Grab my brass. All right, so this is definitely where you want to start babying your brass. The second it comes out of this, you definitely want to make sure that that brass doesn't fall on the floor and dent that case mouth opening. And I also like to do what's called a tabletop test to make sure the primers are seating just below flush. So I'm just going to run this quick, make sure that a primer comes out on that shuttle. And it did. There's the primer. I don't know if you guys can make that out. So let me see here. So you could see, if you're new to the game, here's your primer. So you can actually see it here. And let me get this tripod figured back out here. And we can start seating primers. Now, like I said, I like to do what's called the tabletop test. And what that does is it makes sure that the primer seats just below flush. And if it shouldn't go too low. I guess I have seen a couple really rare situations where the primer seats so low because I had a out of spec primer pocket uniformer, and I have seen that. But what you're more concerned about is making sure that the primer doesn't stick out too far. If the primer is not just below flush and it sticks out too far, you can get what's called a slam fire, and it's really bad. And to make sure that it doesn't stick out too far and it sits just below flush, you do what's called the tabletop test. And you set it down at a table like this, and if it sits flat and fast and it doesn't wobble, then you're good with the primer. And you can actually take a light or a flashlight and you can hold it just like this, so not directly underneath it, but somewhat off it at a slight angle in front of a flashlight, and it helps you see that the primer is seating just below flush. And you probably can't see this in the video, but at least for me, I can, and I can tell that that primer is seating just below flush. So do a quick tabletop test. Like I said, we're going to baby our brass. I'm going to put that right in our tray. So run another piece here and tabletop test it. Doesn't wobble, looks good. Quick inspect the primer and move on to the next piece. So if you guys got any questions, let them rip. I'll try my best to answer them. And we are on the 4th fire here. So I don't know if some of you guys remember this or not, if you've been watching the series, but we got 3rd fire previously, so we're up to the 4th fire now. And something you're probably going to want to keep an eye on at this point is loose primer pockets. And it all depends on the cartridge that you're reloading for. Some get looser primer pockets faster than others. And let me back you guys up here so you can see me, so you're not just talking to my hand. Some cartridges, depending on how hot you load them, or you overly do primer pocket uniforming, you can get loose primer pockets really fast, or especially if you do your swaging incorrectly with a Dillon Super 600. So here's my Dillon Super 600. If you don't set this up properly and this part sticks out too far, and you kind of over swage it, you can kind of get that primer pocket out of spec. And I've noticed, you know, those primer pockets they'll lose their tension faster. So swaging and eliminating that crimp primer pocket's really important, not to do it incorrectly. And if you load really hot cartridges, you can see primer pockets becoming loose, and you feel that resistance in your press handle. So if you're new, if I'm seating this primer, and especially in the first round of reloading for that brass, you're going to notice when I seat that primer, I could feel that resistance through the handle. It's pretty snug. I feel that tension. And the second round of reloading on it, it's on its 2nd fire, I still feel pretty much the same amount of resistance. It's still pretty tight. I can feel that resistance through the press handle. Now I'm up to the 3rd fire. And now, you know, it's not as tight. I could feel it through that press handle. They're getting a little more loose. And now I'm up to the 4th fire. And some cartridges, and 223 is kind of notorious for this, or 556. You're like, wow, did I even seed a primer? It doesn't even feel like the primer even seated. And I'll take it out, and sure enough, the primer's in there, but there was no tension when seating that primer. And that is a good indication of when you need to trash that brass. And I know some of you guys ask this question if you're new, how many total reloads do you usually get out of your brass? And it just depends on the firearm. You know, you're gonna get less with a semi-automatic compared to a bolt action. It depends on how hot you load the round compared to a milder entry-level charge or something like that. It just depends. You know, if you're running at the very high end of your powder drop, you're most likely obviously gonna get either split necks or your primer pockets. That pressure's got to go somewhere, and usually beelines it right to the primer pocket. Those primer pockets are going to get loose, especially on a semi-automatic. You can easily start to see that around the fourth fire, depending on what it is, especially something like 556 or 223. You know, 308s, especially out of a bolt action, heck, you can get reloads clear up to 10 total reloads, as long as you're not maxing out your powder charge. So let me read some of your comments here. So the last one is just got a bunch of primers from Sportsman's Warehouse here in Fairbanks, and that's awesome. I'm curious, what price did you get those for? I'm just curious. Seems like they're going for pretty cheap right now if you can get them. You know, typically you can usually get 100 excuse me, 100 primers for about $4. Roughly $40 for 1,000. Yeah, so let's keep on going here. We're probably not going to bore you completely with seeding the primers on all this, but I at least wanted to get this out of the way so I wasn't seeding primers plus dropping powder and seeding bullets all in one shot. Good old Paul's rolling in the house, a little late to the party. It's all right, man. Understandable. And we're just seeding primers. So yeah, that's about it. It's pretty simple, and every press is different, you know, and some guys seat primers by hand with a hand tool. And see, that one wobbles a little bit. Now, something I just want to get out of the way in regards to the tabletop test is, if you're doing the tabletop test, you know, and you're seating these, you're setting this down on the table, and it sits down flat and fast. You know that primer's not sticking out and it's just below flush. And you move on to the next piece, and it kind of wobbles a little bit. There's a good chance that that primer's not seated all the way. It's sticking out a little bit, but you can get false readings if you have like ejector marks. You got running like an AR, you see this a lot on AR-10s, like a 308 AR. You'll get like an ejector mark on the base of the brass, and that will give you a false indication when you're doing that tabletop test. That's something you definitely want to keep an eye on when you're doing this. Now, make sure you're wearing these safety glasses. It's never happened to me, but I've seen horror stories of an entire primer tube exploding. Somehow one of those primers got caught up in the shuttle or something, and one of the primers ignites, and no joke, that whole row of primers, you got 100 primers in there, they all take off. And I've literally seen pictures of that primer tube exploding on somebody, and man, is that ever dangerous. And regardless of what you're doing in the reloading room, you should always have these on. Especially when you're seeding primers. It is no joke, but regardless, you should have them on anyway. Otherwise, that is pretty much it. This is pretty easy, my friends. And something I'll do once I get these all seated, and I'm not going to take you through all 50 pieces. I'm not going to bore you to death with that. You could actually see this one kind of wobbles a little bit. I don't know if you guys can make that out. And I'm going to check. And sure enough, I must not have pressed down hard enough. And now it sits down flat and fast. I can't stress that enough. One of the worst things, two of the worst things in the reloading world in regards to dangers is case head separation and slam fires. And they can be very, very dangerous. And if you do this incorrectly, that primer sticks out too far, you're going to get what's called a slam fire. And you're going to have a very bad day. Once I get all the primers seated, I don't really do this much. I'll still do it just to be safe. Better safe than sorry. But if you are using stainless steel pins, especially the pins and not the pellets, I have this flashlight laying around and I strictly will inspect every single case mouth opening. I'll look inside every single piece of casing, brass. I'll go over all 50 of them. I'll just double check and make sure that there is not a stainless steel pin in there if you are using stainless steel media, which if you guys have been following the series, you know I don't use that anymore. But it's something you definitely need to keep an eye on. So, well, the next time I see you, my friends, it's going to be dropping powder and seeding bullets, and we will be done. And after that, which I can't do live, I wish I could, but I can't, we are going to shoot these reloads, and you're going to watch this very ammunition print on paper. It should be pretty exciting. Well, do me a favor if you could, my friends, jump over to Elfster's Minute Americans, subscribe over there. Eventually I'll have a link in the description box below once I get the thumbnail done for this live series. Also, don't forget to subscribe to Elfster's Rifles and Reloading. And subscribe, like, and share. Hit that notification bell. Become a Patreon. And I will see you guys in the last part, most likely tomorrow. I'm going to guess, don't hold this to me, but around 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. See you in the next video.